I'd like to introduce Chaeny Emanavin. Since coming to agency and as Director of Health and Human Services Office of Innovation, Chaeny has been applying and teaching human-centered design, iterative, agile methodologies, design thinking, and deep dive problem definition techniques to create novel solutions for the state. Prior to joining agency, Chaeny was a web team lead, program manager, and product manager in the federal government, serving with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the U.S. Digital Services. He earned a master's degree in communication, culture, and technology from Georgetown University, and a bachelor's of science degree in symbolic systems from Stanford University. I now give you Chaeny Emanavin. Chaeny?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for Manisha for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining. It looks like we have over 100 participants, which is really exciting. And appreciate all the interest, especially as CDII tries to launch this webinar series. So I hope to get this started on a good foot here and get everyone excited about all the wonderful things that we are doing collectively as Health and Human Services together to serve Californians. So the presentation I'm going to give you today is talking about human-centered design. And in a moment, I will get you the slides. Let me actually pull up the slide deck here. And I'm going to take over screen sharing. So everyone should be able to see my screen as the little prompt is telling me. So this is a shortened version of the normal human-centered design deck that I present to leadership. There are a few different versions of this. This is a talk just to give you an idea of what human-centered design is and how it can be of benefit. There is also a practitioner level course, which is typically 3 days. Sometimes it can be taught in as few as 2 days, but that course gets you into the techniques, the methodologies, and how to actually apply the things that I'm talking about in this talk to your day-to-day work so you can reap the wonderful benefits of human-centered design. So without further ado, let's get into this. One more reminder, I'm going to go quickly through this. I'm not going to be able to explain every concept, but we have the Q&A at the bottom. So please feel free to enter questions. One of my wonderful alumni from my program, Ashley Draper, is in there and she will be happy to answer questions, as will Manisha and Barbara, if applicable. And at the end, we'll have time to actually answer some of these questions live. But if you have questions or ideas or thoughts or anything that you'd like to share, please feel free to use the Q&A button. Okay. And let me get into these slides here. And yes, if you're interested in these slides, there will be handouts and slides that we will present as a follow-up to the webinar afterwards, which will give you some takeaway materials to remember all the wonderful, hopefully, things that I share with you today. So, what is human-centered design? Well, we're going to cover the process in a little bit. But like I was saying before, I recommend the how-to if you want to actually learn the nuts and bolts of doing this. One of the things that we always do in Office of Innovation webinars or in workshops is we always show ground rules. And the idea of ground rules is to get everybody on the same page, because what you're trying to do is get everyone to forge a common understanding. This comes from one of the best facilitation trainings I've ever seen from an organization called Aspiration Tech. And a gentleman named Alan Gunn runs that organization. We always show these ground rules just to give folks an idea of how to set expectations in the meetings. The important one for us is typically when you speak, make one point at a time, unless you're in a lecture mode like this. But this one we find really useful. When you're in a group of n number of people, try to speak 1/n of the time. And that's important because for crazy extroverts like me, it helps to make sure that you're not running over the more quiet introverted people in the group, and so that everyone gets a chance to let their opinion, their thoughts, and their ideas be heard. So little tips like this are really great when you're in a group setting to help convene everyone feeling comfortable and safe to share. And you'll see in a moment that feeling of psychological safety is one of the core tenets of human-centered design. Okay, so quickly, what is design? So typically when people talk about design, they think visual design. They think, how does it look? Is it pretty? Does it have good graphics? And that is an important part of design. But I'd like to share a more general definition of design, where just think of design as how to make an idea tangible, how to make it go from a thought in your head to actually being physically in the world, how someone interacts with something that you want them to interact with. You can think of designing your bathroom, because we're about to remodel a bathroom. It's designing how you want to interact with water, right? At the most fundamental way. So think of design as making your ideas tangible. So it doesn't always have to be something that's pretty that you can look and feel and touch. It can be the information flow. It can be the steps. It can be the flow from start to finish. So design is much more inclusive and holistic than just what you see. Okay, so human-centered design, it's also known as human-computer interaction. Some people will also refer to it as UX, which is the user experience, or service design. It has a lot of different sort of names and pieces, but all in all, when you take human-centered design together, it really means it's an approach to involving humans in the entire process from start to finish. And really what this means is starting at the beginning, asking a good set of representatives from your users. How do you experience the problem? How does the problem affect your world? And one thing I'd like to put in your minds is think of staff are users as well. So the experience your staff has in doing a process or filing paperwork or processing forms, that's as important of an experience to think about and to refine and make efficient as it is for an end user or an applicant going through the process of filling out the form. So it's all included there. So it's one of the things we mean by multi-stakeholder engagement, especially since we serve Californians. We have people who come from a lot of different viewpoints and perspectives, so it's important to gather all that. Creative experimentation is really important because you find that there is more than one solution to a problem, and that's great. And this is the key, and this is sort of a shorthand that works for everything. If you think designing with instead of designing for someone, then you are in the proper mindset from go. Because if you're with someone designing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, they're part of the process. You're not going away and then coming up with something, then going, here, do you like this? And having them go, what? That wasn't even the problem. So we'll talk about that a little more, but just think, if you don't take away anything else from this, think design with, not for, and that will get you a majority of the way there for human-centered design. Okay, so since everywhere on the internet, it's a really attention grabbing to have those 3 weird rules or whatever that you see as clickbait. So I'm giving you a little bit of clickbait, but I hope that this is more substantial. But these are the top 3 reasons why human-centered design needs to be in your core competencies. So I'm meaning it a little tongue in cheek, but there is a good way to memorize these just by thinking of these top 3 as how human-centered design is a booster to your business. So it helps you align your problem definition with all those different user groups. It'll help make your business goals more tangible. And it will also avoid the expense of rework. Now, for folks who've been in IT for a while, the first time you build something, that's not the expensive part. It's rebuilding something or fixing things if there's a major problem. That's where it gets expensive. It's the way I make shorthand, and Ashley will probably be chuckling when I say this because I would say this a lot when we were in training. Changing ideas on paper is really cheap. Changing code is really expensive. So try to get all of your ideas out on paper so they're easy to share, get ideas and feedback, and then you can change them more simply if you're going down the wrong path. So number 1, problem definition. This is why, in my humble opinion, 99.9% of our efforts fail. It's because we don't quite have alignment from everyone, from executive sponsorship all the way down to the user. Are we all explaining and experiencing the problem in the same way? And I would hazard a guess, no, we're not. I mean, I know we're not. So because of that, this is how a hypothetical situation would go, and I'm sure this has never happened to anybody on this webinar, but typically you'll identify an issue. Oh, people aren't using our services. So the team jumps into it. Hey, we're going to fix this right away. Awesome. Get smart people. Everyone's going to fix this problem. Why aren't people using the services? So the team will go, oh, well, maybe it's because we haven't communicated it very well. Or maybe the process is a little bit clunky. So let's make the form a little bit better. Okay, great, great. So they go and they build solutions. So one team, they decide to make great marketing messages, improve the look of the website so it's easier to see, and the other group works on the form. Or actually, excuse me, in this example, they actually work on the policy and the procedures to make it a little more streamlined, right? Great. But then you find out, well, people still aren't using the services. So management's a little grumpy and the team's like, what went wrong? Website looks beautiful. We made the policy a little more streamlined, like this should be good. We should see some improvement, right? So then did everyone agree before we went into that on what success looks like? Did you have agreement on scope, size, direction of the problem? And did we talk to the right people? A lot of times your user group is a little bit different than what you expect. And sometimes you have people stand in for a user group, and that can be fine, but people's opinions change quickly. So the more direct feedback you can get from your end users, the actual people who are using the application or wanting the service, that's the best feedback you're going to get. And if you didn't have all of those ingredients, chances are you were a little bit misaligned, and a little bit of a misalignment can make you way off on the target. So unfortunately, what that means is sometimes the project's canceled, it's paused, people are a little grumpy. The concept of tire fire makes me laugh for a project because it's never really this bad, but it can be really disheartening, and you don't want your team to have their hard work go unrecognized and unappreciated and unused, right? So in this case, what the customer really needed was a checklist that let them know what steps they needed to do and what steps they didn't do. So we did all these things, marketing and all those, but that wasn't the core problem that the user was having. So we solved something, we just solved the wrong problem. Anything you build is a solution. You just want to make sure you're building the solution for the people that you intend to, for the problem that they're asking you to fix. So let me see if this is, this is really important because you need a deep dive into the daily experience of users, and you need to align management, including your sponsors, because sometimes the sponsors won't have the same idea of the problem either. So as you go out and discover, hey, the problem's a little different than we thought, that's great. Share that with management so they're going to be like, oh, great. This is wonderful. We did not know that this was how the problem is being experienced. So now let's fix that. And another thing is that we in the federal space, private space, state space, the problems that we try to tackle are enormous. So one of the big tips is to break your problems into smaller pieces, like they're called challenge statements. We'll talk about that a bit more. But challenge statements let you break the problem into small enough pieces that you can solve a tiny piece and the next tiny piece and the next tiny piece. And after a while, you have momentum. And when you solve enough of those challenge statements, you've taken a big chunk out of the larger problem set. So problem definition is essential. I want to share one quick story with you. When I was at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, we were working with our Office of Public Affairs, and they were updating the external facing Bureau of Indian Affairs website. And they came to us and they said, we really have a problem with getting the Word documents with the content, onto the website. We were like, great. So we were using WordPress at the time. So we worked on a WordPress plugin that made it so that it was really easy to take content from a Word document and paste it into a WordPress screen so that it would be nicely formatted in the HTML. And we made sure that was really efficient, and we were super happy with that. And we showed it to them. We said, great, we have this now that you can take the Word document and you press a button and boom, it's published to the website and it's aligned beautifully, and aren't you happy? And they went, wow, that's really cool. That's not the problem we had though. The problem we had though was that everybody emails these Word documents around. We're never sure which version is the most current version of the Word document. So sometimes we publish a final version and it's actually the second to last version. So we were like, we solved the wrong problem. So again, it was a solution. just wasn't the one that they had at the moment. So at any rate, that's why problem definition is important. And you could say, oh, it's just a semantic communication thing, but sometimes you don't really understand a problem until you've had a chance to observe the problem in the wild, right? So that's why we do a lot of deep dive interviews in human-centered design. And I know you're thinking, okay, yeah, we do focus groups, we send out surveys, those are great. However, human-centered design will encourage you to think wider and more deeply than a focus group, because focus groups don't always get to deep-seated and often unconscious habits and behaviors to why people do what they do. And focus groups are also misleading because in a focus group, because humans are social animals, when you get the more verbose people in a focus group, they will talk, and the people who are quieter may not agree with them, but they'll just go along a lot of times. So in that focus group, you'll come around thinking, oh, great, everybody in that room agreed. And really, it was just maybe one or two people who thought that. So focus groups can lead you astray. So the core of human-centered design is to get insight into someone's experience. And that means, to borrow a cliche, walk in their shoes. And you really need to experience how they are experiencing the problem. It also means you also have to understand what cultural things are they coming from. Are they coming from a situation where there might be linguistic, racial, cultural, logistic, other things that are keeping them from being able to interact with your services the way that you expect them to. And those are important to understand. All right. So asking once isn't enough. As I said before, opinions change, situations change. And because of that, the process of human-centered design has a continuous discovery model where you're constantly going out and asking people, how does this work for you? Does this solve your problem? Has things changed since we last spoke to you? Okay. So the second part is I'd like you to think of design as an advantage and not as an expense. So one of the things with human-centered design is that you can think of design because it's the manifestation of your intent. Good design helps people get business goals done well. So for example, you can imagine an equation where design is directly leading to the completion of some business goal. And you can think of a fictional, e-commerce site or something else that would use something like this. So the design goal might be, we want a single click for you to be able to purchase and check out. So you don't have to do a bunch of steps, because we want on our business goal 25% more of our browsing behavior to be turned into purchases. So if we add a single click button, our assumption, our hypothesis is that 25% more of those browsing will get turned into actual purchases. So maybe we want to increase the return customers by 10%. Well, what if we display our loyalty points after each purchase? That's a design that shows the loyalty points. Now you know, ooh, I'm only a few points away. Maybe I'll just go back and buy something. And what if we want to increase customer satisfaction? Why don't we simplify the returns? And this one, the story I like to use is, you don't always think of returns as a good customer experience process because it's like, oh, they're returning something, we're happy with the product. But Amazon, a few years ago, you folks might be familiar with, you can now return items to Kohl's, for example. So I thought, okay, great, I'll return it to Kohl's. It's right around the corner from here. When I went in there, there was a desk dedicated to that, returned my item, and while I was there, Kohl's handed me a $25% off gift certificate and a $5 Kohl's cash thing for me to go ahead and shop in store. So now, wait a minute, I just got a discount for returning something. So now I'm happy with Amazon and I'm happy with Kohl's. So it was a win-win. And it was one of those unexpected things where I didn't expect a return process to make me like a organization more, because it's just like, hey, I'm just returning this thing. It wasn't the right size. So little things like this can become business accelerators. So the way designers define it is UX helps users get tasks done well. Therefore, think of it as a business advantage, right? And you can draw equivalencies. So our big, hairy, audacious goal, our mission goal, a lot of times is, did we improve someone's life? Did, say it's social services, did we provide a service to somebody to help them out when they really needed it? So you can say that is a great mission statement. With UX success or UX outcomes, it's the exact same definition. Did we improve someone's life, right? So 3 ways that you can think of actual metrics, so numbers, and this is important for data folks. You can find a way for your metrics to back up the design decisions that you make and to test if you made the right design decisions, and also to measure, is the business outcome what we expected from this design change? And the way you do that is with these types of UX metrics. The first one is the one I just talked about, the UX outcome. Did we change someone's life? It's a flag in the sand, and we say sand because the flag can move, and that's fine. Your goals can change, also fine. But there is a definite, did we achieve it or did we not, right? So sometimes you want to have a hard number associated with it. We want 50% more Californians to apply for this service by August 2022. And the second year, when you're at 49, you're almost there. And the second you hit 50%, you've hit that goal and you celebrate. And it's important to have a celebration. You want the team to realize that their hard work is paying off. The second type of metric is a progress metric. And that's totally what you'd expect it to be. Are we hitting our milestones? So if the goal is 50% more people to apply to this thing, maybe your first goal is that first person who applied. Yay. Maybe 25%, maybe 75% on the way to your goals. And that's just to see how are we doing in relation to our deadlines. And then the third one, and this is one that we don't really spend enough time talking about as leadership and as design thinkers. What's the UX problem value statement? And that is, what's the cost of the problem versus the cost of the solution? And I know the folks who are data minded, this is something that you are thinking about all the time, even if you don't put it in these words. But there are times where there's a problem and the problem has a cost associated with it. Sure, no problem. But if the cost of the solution is more expensive than the cost of the problem, then we might be better off just mitigating those problem expenses until the cost of the solution is cheaper than the cost of the problem. But you have to be careful because the cost of the problem sometimes is more than just the support tickets, the help desk calls, etc. You also have to have a way to factor in qualitative opinion. Are people super annoyed? And because if they are annoyed, that has a cost associated with it that doesn't always show up in dollars and cents, but those bad vibes can have an expense for your organization. And some organizations will give you these single question surveys. They're called Net Promoter. And it's, would you recommend our products and services to a friend or family member? 0 to 10. And the idea is that if you're higher on that scale and they would recommend it, it means that you're doing well. If they don't, then you need to convince them by improving your service that they would want to recommend this. People only recommend things that they really believe in to people who they, are close with. So if you have a good service, they will recommend it. So that's just a simple 1-question survey that can see how you're doing. Okay, last point here. Fixing stuff is expensive. And, I say that a little bit, tongue in cheek, but it's true. In that, I want you to think of UX debt as technical debt. And if you've been in IT, you know that technical debt is something you want to avoid. The database is on a soon to expire platform. So we need to move that. That's going to be expensive. We built it in Microsoft Access because we didn't think it was going to be this big. Now we got to move it to a relational database. Ooh, that's going to be expensive. So technical debt is expensive because you need to maybe buy a product, a developer, a team has to come in and actually do the migration. You have to make sure it works. That's a lot of person power and it's expensive. UX debt is the same thing, because if you have a button on your website that's not easy to see and people are missing it, or people are filing and sending poorly filled out forms because they didn't understand what they needed, someone has to go in, fix that error, a developer has to recode it, and then you have to tell your customers, hey, try it again. And that can be just as expensive, if not more expensive, than the technical debt behind it. So I want you to think of UX debt and technical debt as equivalencies. So it's also expensive and compounding. So a lot of times when we have a problem and we're not sure how to fix it, we go and we hire consultancies to come in. And when I was at US Digital Service, we would call them the superstar designers. They would have to come in and fix these things. And it's great because these are really experienced folks who can come in and help you identify problems quickly. But the techniques that they use in my time that I was there, I realized that this is something that is a process that we can learn as state or federal employees, and then we can do this ourselves, and we can avoid a lot of these problems. Then we can save our money for the really truly wicked problems that we need that deeper experience in, and then we're spending our money more wisely, and we're not making these problems that we can solve ourselves just by following a process that makes sure that we ask deeper questions. Let me tell you one quick story. Well, let me summarize and let me tell you a quick story. So 3 ways that UX enables your business goals is that it aligns everybody on problem definition. It's the tangible realization of how you're getting your work done. And it also helps you avoid unnecessary rework. Also, when we're talking about measuring things, try to remember these. Again, we'll have these slides, and the longer course goes into these in much more detail, how to collect them. And they're a blend of qualitative and quantitative data here. So there's actually some really cool methodology behind this. But think of it as, your success is equal to your mission statement, your progress or your milestones, and your problem value is the cost of the problem more or less than the cost of the solution. And what happens if your organization business goal, as you're doing this, you realize that it's not well defined, it's a little bit too vague, it's not easy for you to understand as a team? Use this as an opportunity to drive alignment. And what I mean here is that it can be difficult to have that crucial conversation with management to tell them, hey folks, I hate to tell you this, but the way we've been defining the problem is actually incorrect. When we went out into the world, our users are experiencing the problem thusly. So we need to change our definition of the problem in order to better align with our users, with our customers, with our constituents, with Californians. And you'll find that it can be a difficult conversation, but in my experience, management is always so happy to go, we did not know that. Thank you for bringing this. This helps us make sure that our organizational business goals are better aligned. And now with this new insight, we can have better goals and better align the rest of the team. So thank you. So I encourage you to always be willing to have these conversations in a very respectful, open-minded way, and just present what you've found, because it only helps make the organization stronger. One more story I'd like to share is a story from a group of folks who used to be at US Digital Service. This Marina Nitsky used to be the CIO of Veterans Affairs. And when she was done with her time at US Digital Service, she decided to apply her considerable talents to fixing the foster care system, which is wonderful. And a lot of people would appreciate that. So her new organization went to Rhode Island. Not because Rhode Island was doing anything wrong, but because it was a smaller state and because they were like, hey, can we come and check this out? And what they found was that Rhode Island, and forgive me, I'm going to get some of the numbers wrong, but you get the idea, is that Rhode Island was experiencing about 70% of the people who were applying to be foster parents were not making it through the process. And they were trying to figure out why. Well, they went and they observed the process. And what they found is that when people are applying, there's a big packet of paperwork that they have to go through, no problem. So they were going through the paperwork, and what they found is that there's the essential top 4 pages, and then there's some other explainer pages, and then there is a critical medical information page that's buried in the middle of the packet. People were missing that medical page, and when they missed it, their applications would be incomplete, and then they'd have to get contacted back, and oh, you're missing this, and oh shoot, what are we missing, and blah, and the back and forth was getting people so disheartened that they were essentially, they weren't necessarily always giving up, but it was taking months and months and months and years to get through this process that should have taken literally days. So do you know what their solution was? Their first idea was, Rhode Island was saying, hey, let's do a digital system where people can apply online. And, that can be handy. I did that when I was at USCIS. We had an electric system to apply for your naturalization. It was handy. That wasn't the problem or the solution that worked for Rhode Island. Their solution? One staple. They took that really important medical form and they stapled it together with the other 4 pages. And after that, 99.9, like some almost perfect applications were submitted. People stopped missing it because it was there and it was together, and they knew that I have to fill all of these out. So you don't always have to make an expensive electronic solution. Sometimes the solution can be just as simple as seeing where people are making mistakes and adding a paper clip or a staple so that people know, oh, this is important. Please don't forget these sheets. Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit faster through the slides at this point because this is getting a little more into methodologies, and I don't want us to spend so much time on this because this takes days to normally cover. I just want to give you a little taste of some of the techniques. So design has a framework, and what do I mean by that? George Box probably said this. All models are wrong and some are useful. He was definitely a statistician though. And what this means is everything that we do, all the processes that we follow, doesn't always reflect the world perfectly, but they can be useful. And why this is important is the goal of the human-centered design training that I put teams through is I want you to think about the 4 stages of human skills acquisition. You start off unconsciously competent. I have no idea what I don't know. And then you become consciously incompetent, where you realize, oh man, there's so much I don't know. Then you become consciously competent, meaning, I'm getting this, I can do this with a little bit of help. And then you become unconsciously competent, where you're a master and you've forgotten more than people know. The idea is when you get to conscious competence, you can do really high quality work if you have a paint by the numbers, a pattern, a flow to follow so that you remember to do all the steps. So what does that sound like? Agile. Agile processes, for example, is a set of ceremonies and steps so that people remember to do good team practices to build effective software. Make problems smaller. Make sure everyone knows what people are working on and share, if you need help. And then review after you've built a small thing and see if it's getting you closer to that solution. That's the whole point of Agile. It doesn't have to be called that, but if you follow the steps of Agile, it gets you to a place where you're doing consciously competent steps to do good things to build nice software. So that's what I just said there. So human-centered design has a framework, and any guesses to what it's called? The human-centered design process. So pretty easy to remember. So it has 5 steps. You empathize, which is really what I was talking about before, understanding someone's needs and how they're experiencing the world, defining how you want to make the problem smaller so that you can solve it. Ideate, which means coming up with really cool, it's the fun part, it's brainstorming, coming up with really cool ideas. You want to prototype that solution so that you can figure out the best way to, how can you make your solution testable is what the prototype is. Sorry, I was tripping on my words there. But the idea is that what's the simplest way that you can test? I have a hypothesis that this will fix the problem. Instead of building the whole website or the whole app, can you sketch it out on paper, show it to someone and see if they like it? So that's the whole point of test, is you show people your ideas, get feedback, and then you start the whole loop over again. Okay. So quick shout out, there's an organization called Civic Makers that does human-centered design specifically for civic tech and for they do a lot with local and county and city governments, but they help put together the human-centered design training that I teach my innovation cohorts. So a lot of the content is repackaged from the training that they give my cohorts. And it's really good because they focus on human-centered design for the public sector context, which is a little different than private industry, right? In public sector, we have more constraints. The complexity is much greater. Our systems are larger, and we have a triple bottom line. We have people, profit, government, but you do need to make sure that you're spending the people's money wisely, and planet. Especially in California, we really want to make sure that we are being environmentally and sound, and we're doing right by our fellow Californians. So again, I'm going to go quickly through this. The idea with empathize is you don't want to do focus groups. You really want to observe and interview people and really understand what they're thinking and feeling, because we're emotional creatures, and those deep set of beliefs and opinions really drive behavior. So a technique that we talk about and we teach in the course is story harvesting, which is awesome. It should feel natural. It's one person tells a story and a lot of people listen to it. But in story harvesting for human-centered design, one person tells their experience using a system or applying for something. And then the interviewer is one of your staff who's just focused on the storyteller, asking questions, getting them to tell more about the story. And other folks from the staff are there taking notes, and they're listening for certain themes. And one person might be listening for problems with the process. Another might be listening for breakthrough moments. Another might be listening for outside influences. And the idea is that after a 45-minute, hour-long, half-hour, however long the talk is, you have a much richer set of notes than you would have if only one person was listening to one storyteller. You can't scribble down those notes. So after it, you thank the storyteller for their time, and then the team shares what they've learned. And that collective story harvest becomes an absolutely rich source of insight. And after a few of these sessions, you're going to find you start hearing repeated themes. Now you're hitting common things that if you solve those problems, you're going to fix problems for a lot of people. And I know especially data folks are thinking, but if you do story harvesting, you're only talking to a couple people, that's not statistically significant. I mean, we're serving millions of Californians. So if you're not, interviewing enough people, you're going to have skewed results. And I said, that's true. However, that's not the point of human-centered design. The point of human-centered design is, like I was saying before, to find those deep-seated opinions, motivations, and other things that influence behavior, and to create archetypes of those folks so you go, oh, for folks who have this type of experience or this type of opinion, this is how they see the problem, and this is how we can fix it for them. And that's important because those archetypes can take in, like I was saying before, racial, cultural, logistic, socioeconomic, all those things that we need to think about. And it can wrap those into a way that makes it easier for you to think of that collectively to solve problems for folks who experience the world in similar ways. The other reason why human-centered design is a little bit different is you're looking for usability problems. And usability problems don't show themselves as statistically significant polling. It's not like people's opinions for voting. People tend to do the same sort of habits over and over again. So the Norman Nielsen Group, which is a really great human-centered design organization, they found that after 3 users, the number of new problems you discover drops significantly, and you get a long tail of new problems found. So the way I teach my teams to do it is do 3 user tests, find all those problems, go back, adjust your prototype to fix those problems, interview 3 more people, find 3 new problems, because they will. Or did your solutions even work? Revise, test 3 more, revise. And you can do that in a single day. In a single day, 8 hours, you can do 9 user tests basically, and make 3 revisions to your design in such a way that at the end of that, you are going to have a much more solid, much more usable product than you did at the beginning. And it only takes 1 day. So it's a very powerful tool. So Define, this is what I was talking about before. Now, again, this is really important for the teams to do. This is a cute video that I'm going to skip in the interest of time. I'll show you just a quick bit of it.
How can you tell the difference between real progress and the illusion of progress?
You all probably can't hear that because I didn't share my sound, did I? All right. Well, oh, you can't hear it. All
I
right.
can hear it.
Well then, never mind. I'm just gonna keep playing it.
Seasons, a sharp decline in the fish population was noticed. A strategic initiative to help save the Nordic fish was announced. Bob from the Animal Reproductive Agency was to lead the task force. Under Bob's leadership, they invested into a public awareness campaign to protect the fish. Despite the extensive campaign, the fish population continued to dwindle.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. So what they did is they started, they got a volunteer fish named Hector, and they started giving him cool things like fin extensions, and they put him on a training, will he be able to swim faster and stronger? And then they decided, oh, the problem is the bears. The bears are eating the fish, so they moved all the bears out of there. And they gave him all this cool, fancy Iron Man looking suit. And, they trained him, he still couldn't make it. So then, they couldn't figure out what's going on. And then I'll play the rest here. Oops, too far. Okay.
Just then, the sensors started sending notifications. Hector had made it to the river's head. The mood changed instantly. The program was a huge success. Alex observed the humans and wondered what they were celebrating. Still puzzled, he turned and put the finishing touch on his dam, designed to help slow the river's current back to its normal velocity.
So then they kept the program going, and they spent millions to put more fish in Iron Man suits so it could keep going. So they did all these really cool things. But the problem was that the stream was too fast. And when Alex the beaver put his dam back, fish could make it. So,
how can you tell the difference?
now I'm stuck in the wrong slide. So by defining your problem tightly, you can reduce it to the scope that you are trying to solve in the time allotted. But by solving small problems, if they had looked and thought, it's the speed, it's what are all the factors that are keeping him from making it there, you can get to the root problem, not the symptoms, right? So another organization that we work with during the training is a group called Smallify. They specialize in helping teams take big problems and smallifying them into smaller problems. And they use a lot of the design thinking techniques to get you there. Other things that I teach my teams are journey mapping, which is a way to flow out the process from start to finish. And then you fold those learnings into personas or archetypes for you to know, okay, here's how different groups of folks are experiencing these problems. So we're a little short on time here, so I'm going to go a little bit faster here. Another important skill is KJ analysis. You probably also know it for sticky noting, where you group like ideas together, you give that group a label, and that is how you can get a lot of information from a lot of people really, really quickly. There's a link in the chat about this. It's a wonderful technique. Please read the article. It's very simple. And again, you can reach out. I'm more than happy to give you a quick primer on it. But it's a technique that we use all the time. It's won't say that we've used it to plan vacations, but we have used it to eliminate options very quickly that wouldn't be as fun for everyone. So and this is what a journey map looks like. It's a lot of sticky notes on the wall, you group them. And what's powerful about this is when you have all the different constituents, users, however you want to define them, in the room, you find out that, including staff, you're going to see there's a lot of grouping because everyone does the same steps. And then there will always be like one sticky where it's like this one group has to do this one step and no one else is aware of it. And that one sticky can be so illuminating because people can be like, oh, I didn't know you had to do that step. No wonder you're annoyed when I do this earlier on. Yeah. So having everybody in the room and putting their experience on the wall makes it so that you're not talking past each other. You can physically see, oh, this is what happens. So you can digitize it afterwards as a artifact, which gets a little complex, but it's a little much. This is a sample of what a persona looks like. Again, I know I'm blowing through these. The idea isn't for you to learn how to use these techniques. I just want to give you a taste. One thing I've been trying to improve on, impress on the groups is that mise en place means having everything ready to go. It's a great concept for cooking, right? All your spices are there so you don't have to burn something while you're looking for the salt, right? If you have a wall where you have everything the team knows and what you're currently working on, an agile wall, a Kanban board, but adding the things that you've discovered and you've learned, this makes it so that when you reach an insight that's an illumination, you're like, oh, wow, we didn't know this. This explains everything. It's on the wall and now you can act on it because you know where the team is, where the progress is, and you can add a new story. That's the beauty of those types of walls, like the Kanban board type thing, is the mise en place. I got a new insight and now I can act on it. So ideate, this is the fun part. This is brainstorming. Adam Grant has some great, he's a behavioral psychologist from University of Pennsylvania. He's got some great books and podcasts on that. This is what I was talking about before, the fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Fixed is, I don't think we can change anything. You can only do so much. Whereas growth sees these as challenges that we can solve that we didn't know we could solve before. And there's a great design thinking exercise that we do where you try this with your team. Plan an office party, but after every idea, say yes, but, and say why that idea won't work and throw out another one. Then design a home appliance, but after every suggestion, say yes and throw out another even crazier suggestion. And then just measure the amount of creativity and the amount of energy after those two exercises. It's pretty amazing how one word can make so much of a difference. The idea is that if you place small bets and you solve little parts of the problem, you can continually course correct to get to whatever your solution is. And smarter folks than I can tell you, P1 is actually physically a shorter line than P3 because you're spending less time off course, but it should make sense. Anyway, quick example of this. Pfizer, almost 20 years ago, decided, hey, we need a new use for Listerine. So they had two project managers come up with different ideas. One project manager went out and just went to a CVS and just sat there. I think it was Rite Aid actually, and said, why are you buying Listerine? To people who are buying the little small travel ones. And they said, oh, when I travel, I don't always have a chance to get to the hotel first. I have to go to the meeting and I want to feel fresh. And he goes, what do you not like about it? And people were saying, well, in my bag or my purse, the bottle spills, everything smells like Listerine, and that's horrific. Like, please don't. So what he decided to do was, can we make a dry version of Listerine? So he went to the lab and he said, is this possible? And they went, no, well, let's try it. So they created what became the Cool Strips. They put it in one store and tested it out to see, would people buy it? And then they found that people did buy it. And so they continued improving it. And now we have Listerine Cool Strips. The other manager, we have no idea what they were thinking of because they never got out of the spreadsheet cost benefit analysis phase. So that just shows you that small bets can sometimes make, industry changing things really quickly. So prototype, come up with ideas quickly. We have people do things as physically tangible as possible to make it easier to explain your ideas to others. This one in the lower right here, we had a group that we were teaching in Montenegro. Actually, this group was from Albania, and they were trying to figure out how they could improve this van that they had to drive around Albania for people to fill out government forms without needing to go to an office. They were saying, hey, how about if we put this, instead of in the van, also in the post offices? So they were physically trying to see what layout would make sense. And then you test it. This is important because your plans for the universe are that I'm going to go from start to finish, but the universe has a much more interesting plan in place for you. So you want to be able to get feedback quickly. So you want to ask all of your sponsors, from executive sponsors all the way down to your team, when we do this user test, what are you expecting people to do? Write down those expectations so that when you see what people actually do, when you observe, you can see if your assumption was right or not. And another quick one here, I don't want to burn too much time, but people do strange things.
Can you guess which spot that goes
The
in?
square.
That's right. It goes in the square hole.
Yes.
And how about this rectangle? That one
Also the square.
goes in there too.
Yeah.
Up next, we've got this thin rectangle.
The thin
You guess
rectangle.
where that goes?
The thin rectangle.
That's right. It goes in the square hole. And up next, a cylinder.
The circle.
I think that goes in
The circle.
the square hole. Now,
So you can tell sometimes you're like, wait, what? And people start doing unexpected things. So, and you can eventually get to the part where they are doing what you expect. We also use a qualitative and quantitative methodology. I'm a fan of UTAUT, which is Unified Theory of Acceptance and Use of Technology. It's a survey tool that we give people after test sessions, and it's very good at predicting if they will use a technology or not. And you can get great numbers to see if before your changes, if they would use it, and then after your changes, would they use the technology? Okay, so want to leave you with these notes, and I know I'm almost out of time. I want to leave a few seconds for questions, so I'm sorry I'm going a little long here. But it's important for people, especially managers, to empower their staff to use human-centered design. And this is a quote that made me cry the first time I heard it, actually. I'll let you read it, but to paraphrase, you go to a lot of trainings, you come back, you're not allowed to use the training, which seems like a big waste and makes me sad. But if your manager gives you permission to try the new thing that you learned in class, you can play around with it, but you have to be willing as a team to try something and fail and not get it right. So you could try it again and then start learning how to use it and apply it in your world. These are all suggestions. Nothing works perfectly without you tweaking it to fit your situation. So how do you get there? I encourage you to build it and try it. If you send staff to the training, when they come back, have a small project in mind that you can try human-centered design, and then give them space. Like, we're going to try this for a couple rounds of iteration. We're going to do some interviews. We're going to prototype. We're going to test it and see what happens, and see how it works with the traditional way you do it versus trying this methodology. And you're going to get some things wrong, and that's fine. The idea is to practice it and see how much more natural or how much better you can make the process for your team, so you can start reaping the really great benefits of human-centered design that I know work. I mean, human-centered design is the basis of every single app that we're addicted to on our phones. So these are some examples of putting those progress reports on the wall. And this is important for management because this is how you check progress with your team. How are we doing? You see how many stories that have been written and built. But it's also a way to report up to management. And it's a little bit different. Instead of reporting progress, like, hey, we built so many widgets, you're saying, here's the amount of problems that we've researched and insights that we found out. And here's how much better our understanding is. And here's how much better these stories are at solving the problem. So it is a slightly different way to report progress, but it's more effective. So again, think of it this way. If your business goal is you want 25% more applications approved, then maybe your design is to make that form simpler so that people can submit it in a single session of 15 minutes or whatever. And if you don't get it right, that's fine. There's no right answers. It's continuous learning. If your first attempt doesn't make it 5 times faster, did it make it 1 time faster? Did it make it 0.5% faster? That's okay. It's an improvement. Keep building on it. So shameless plug for the next courses. Human-centered design for state practitioners is the larger 3-day course. We also teach product management, facilitation, which I was talking before. We also do a great thing on doing Agile the right way. And some vendors that we work with have great communications team building skills courses. So that is enough of me talking at you. I really appreciate your time and attention. I'm happy to answer a couple of questions. I know we only have like a couple minutes left, but Ashley, if you're able to text or talk, any questions that you want me to answer in live and in person? Oh, there's no open questions in the Q&A. Okay, they're in the chat. Oh, and I did see the comment earlier about the tire fire. Thank you for that. I will, that is good. That could be a little bit insensitive, so I will remove that slide. So thank you for that heads up. I'm sometimes trying to be funny, sometimes it doesn't land right. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. There will be a recording available. Do I have a training schedule? Yeah, generally the 3-day training is 3 4-hour sessions. So we would typically start on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, because Monday and Friday people are typically off. And it will start around 9. It'll go, we do a break every hour. We do a half-an-hour lunch break. So it starts at 9 and ends around 1 o'clock. And over those 3 days, you deep dive into the techniques so that you as a team, and if you're, especially if your management can attend, it helps you understand as a team how you can try these things, monitor how well they're working, and build really great output. How do I recommend going about using Agile and failing in HHS, where a lot of our programs involve vital services? Yeah, that is an excellent, excellent question. What we generally recommend is that you don't try this by cutting off an essential service. Keep the old way up, running, and perfectly going in his normal pace. What you can do is you can build this experiment on the side of, here's a refined form. Here's a form that might be shorter. And you let a couple of people try it at a time and see if their experience is better or faster than the people who are going through the normal process. And if it doesn't work for them, then you can refer them to the normal process. We did this at USCIS with the new naturalization form. We have the normal form up there, and every day we'd let 100 people try the new streamlined one, the electronic only version. And at the end of the day, we cut off those 100, and then everyone else could only see the regular one. And we would ask them how it went. And if anything went wrong, we would hand carry those through the proper process if anything broke. So yeah, absolutely do not cut off a vital service, but give yourself room to experiment and learn. And then if it works better, replace the whole thing slowly and responsibly. Don't just turn it off. I mean, make sure people know what's going on.
Thanks, Chaeny. And so I hate to cut you off because this is such an amazing presentation. We are a little bit over time, and so I want to respect people's time and let them to get people going. But I want to remind everyone that this has been recorded. It will you'll be sent a link to that recording as well as a copy of the slides within the next week. And thank you for sharing your next training. So we are all, of course, very excited about that, and we will look forward to it. We will have all this information bundled up and packaged to every attendee. So just know that. And I also want to let people know that we will be hosting a couple of other presentations. Our next one will be on teleworking effectively. That will be on October, or I think it's later this month on the 28th. And then in October, we have 2 presentations on data visualization, each focusing on different aspects of presenting information. So you'll receive invitations, so please take advantage of the great speakers like Chaeny that we've got lined up for you. And also, I want you to mark your calendars for February 22nd, 2022. We'll be having our 2022 Data Expo. So this virtual event will highlight the agency and department's ongoing data efforts with an emphasis on equity. So it's just going to be amazing. We are still in the planning phases, and we would love to hear from you, your ideas for speakers or topics, something that you may have heard that you think we'd like to maybe bring back. And we just want to know what's important to you. So if you can either drop it in the chat here, fill it out in the survey that we will be sending you at the end of this presentation. And I just want to say, thank you everyone for joining us. Your feedback is important. We want to hear from you, and we want you to join our CDII as we build our data community. So thank you everyone, and have a great day. Thanks, Chaeny.